Hello traders, it is Sunday the 28th of August 2022 and I'm doing this, recording this for the week commencing Monday the 29th of August. So main thing that I really want to take away from this news that I'll be watching this coming week is going to be anything related to the US dollar predominantly, because right now the US dollar, much more so in the last 4 months or so, the US dollar has been driving a lot of the big moves in the market, impacting gold, impacting commodities, as well as just the currencies. And also just as a reminder, please, that on Friday, 1:30 p.m. UK time, non-farm. So we'll have a bit more volatility on the back end of the week. So that's on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And so just to be aware of that, obviously try to avoid trading during those periods when the market is going to be swinging wildly. So that being said, let's go across to the charts. Okay, so looking at the dollar index here, so we finished the week with a very strong, kind of reports out of Jackson Hole that the US dollar, or at least that the Fed will do whatever they have to do to curb inflation, and if that means going through a bit of pain, it means going through a bit of pain. So actually it's quite interesting. There's some really interesting data out there that shows that actually one of the best ways to reduce inflation is to go through a recession. So not necessarily seen as a bad thing. It might just be a good thing to cool off the markets, but just showing that this very strong bullish finish. I just want to mention here though that we had effectively a double top here. So I was expecting a deeper retracement off this, and there is actually still a very real possibility. We've got bearish divergence on these highs, and there is a very real possibility we could see a pullback this coming week. We know the ECB is going to start raising rates. We're going to start raising rates soon, and so that also is likely going to push back on the dollar a bit. So there is a possibility fundamentally that we might see a bit of a pullback into down towards 106, even possibly a little bit further than that. But I do want to say otherwise. Look, that monthly is very overextended, and the weekly looks pretty healthy to me. So on the weekly and monthly, look, the monthly could do with a bit of a break. The weekly to me looks as though it's pretty happy to keep going. There's again bearish divergence on that. And it was just this double top that's pretty unusual. So I do expect there will be some resistance in this area. Will that be enough that we have a strong rejection off that? Again, if we get another rejection off that, we break these lows, we're going to see a deeper pullback here. But that's something that we're just going to have to see by the end of the next week. Otherwise, my expectation here is that we're going to see that dollar continue to strengthen. Let's move across and have a look at euro dollar. So euro dollar, the same thing again, but clear bullish divergence here. So the market is in this area is attempting to turn around. However, that could result in another lower low and then further bullish divergence and then a rejection. So I do think that this area tragically is going to be a little bit of a battleground, and it's going to be a bit tense. There's going to be some pushing below these lows and possibly some further rejections. That weekly is starting to flatten out. If we get a bullish candle here or a bullish engulfing candle here, that's a very strong sign that we're going to see a bit more of a pushback. But right now, again, in isolation, that monthly looks still nice and bearish. We're just past parity. It's a good area for the market to bounce back on, and there's no that would explain why there isn't really a surprise that we're having a bit of a battle in this area. The weekly now looking nice and bearish, but again, I would have expected a stronger finish to the downside, and that curve, that momentum curve, is starting to flatten out, starting to become a little bit bullish. So again, I'm pretty convinced that this area that we're in fact, if I sort of enlarge it, I think this entire area here is going to become a bit of a battleground. This week, there is a very real possibility that we could continue further down. Obviously, we've broken the lows here, but also that we could actually reverse and push up. So I would say that if by the end of the week we finished up above here, above 1.01, then we're likely to see a bit more of a change in direction sooner rather than later. Otherwise, if we continue down, we'll see how we finish for the week. So actually prepared for, in both cases, for that to be the case. If we look at sterling here, cable, very strong bearish candle, wanting to push down the weekly as well, but definite bullish divergence starting to show up now on the weekly side. So what that means is the market is slowing down in its move. Historically, it's near the lows here. So there's a lot of reasons why the market could start to slow down. As I said, it could actually continue down, do another touch further down, and then reject it. But the point of it is bullish divergence is starting to creep in, starting to show here on the weekly as well, which means that there is likely in the coming weeks going to be, if that continues to increase, there's going to be a change in trend, which likely means we'll get a monthly retracement, and it could be quite a big one. Potentially, it could just be back into these old lows, or it could be a bit further up, back in towards those ranges. Looking at Aussie dollar here as well, you can see this is really reluctant to continue lower. Although we have a very strong bearish engulfing candle here, which all of that points to bearishness, there's a lot of pushback as well. So this could ultimately turn out to be an inverted head and shoulders. We will see how that turns out. So we look at Kiwi as well, also pushing down, very strong push. So in other words, is it possible this week we could see a reversal on that? Well, the current and existing sentiment here is very bearish and implies that it's likely to continue down. But the thing is, it could continue down towards these lows and then reject it, and then we start. Then this this bullish reaction, this bearish reaction vanishes. So I'm just keeping that in mind. We've been in this area, we're well overextended on a monthly and weekly basis, and a possibility of a turnaround is a very real thing. Moving on to dollar yen. So again, dollar yen on the weekly, very nice and bullish. This is a straight continuation, but also again, make sure, I'm just noting that this area has found some strong resistance. And actually, we're also overextended on a monthly basis here. So if we do find some resistance here and this ends up being a double top, that is something that wouldn't come as a complete surprise based off that monthly status. The dollar Swissy as well, also pushing up. It's still within a downtrend on that weekly time frame. And again, you saw how much of this rejection was here. Then we get a bullish recovery. We pull back into this area. We've rejected this level of resistance as support, but that also doesn't mean there are necessarily buyers above this area. So it's going to be, again, this implies that there's a battle up here. There are sellers waiting in this area. I'd be surprised if now all the sellers that have been here for the last 3 or 4 months have all of a sudden gone away and everyone's just happy to buy. I'll be quite surprised. You can see in the past, this area is just not full. There's just not a lot of buyers there. So I think that battle could very well continue there. Dollar CAD also has just had, there's just been a lack of interest above these certain levels. We'd had continued failure all along here. It keeps pushing back up. But even here, it is, there's nothing to ultimately say that it won't keep going. But I'm just saying at the same time, there's a lot of evidence the market doesn't really, it's reluctantly giving up that ground. And therefore, it makes it very choppy, makes it tricky to trade, and therefore a bit of a battleground. Dollar ruble not going anywhere. Obviously now what's happening, this is quite different. It's starting to go sideways into a little bit of a coma and starting to produce a lot of spikes above and below. That really just means that this is effectively, the movement on it and volatility on it is pretty much dying. So this looks as though this is pretty much going to be it for a while, unless something happens, maybe the war coming to an end or something unexpected. I think this is pretty much it for now. It's just going to flatline is the correct term I would use. Okay. EURUSD also starting to produce continued bullish divergence. We've got a series of multiple lows. We've got continued bullish divergence on the momentum indicators. It's overextended, producing more smaller and smaller candles and indecision candles here, smaller candles on the monthly. This is in its near future is going to turn around. It's just taking a lot longer to do it. And unfortunately, that just is how the cookie crumbles. And so I do expect at some point this is going to push back from here. Again, we could get a double bottom and a move up. At some point that's going to happen, and you'll hear about it here first. Okay, gold. So again, with that stronger dollar, we could see a very strong bearish candle here. We've broken the low, but then it didn't really follow through on that much. It's already pulled back, and a very strong bearish candle here on the daily. So once we break this low, we get a continuation to the downside. We get that downtrend, and then the next target down here is below 1700 towards that 1675 level. Let's see if gold can do that. But I do expect, again, if we get that dollar weakening, which might not happen this week, it might happen next week, but I do think it's on the cards in the near future. The markets are expressing a bit of a dissatisfaction with it. In the meantime, I'll continue with the trend, but also just saying that I'm cautious with that. Again, silver as well, having produced a nice bearish engulfing candle here, didn't really close near the lows. It's coming back into a significant price level and could ultimately double bottom here. So again, shorting it until we get to these levels and then just being a little bit extra cautious there. Copper actually continuing up and just closing below these levels. It is still within a downtrend on the weekly and could resume a move to the downside, but there's some conflict here. That monthly is looking more bullish than bearish. And again, we've got that conflict. We've got a weekly that wants to go down, a monthly that wants to go up, and a daily that wants to go up. And we're going to have to see which one ultimately wins that battle. Natural gas has obviously been benefiting from all the stuff that's going on in the world at the moment. It's been climbing, but it is battling to get above this level. It's also struggling a little bit here, even that monthly looking nice and bullish, but just not able to get above that 9380 level. Struggling a little bit here, and we'll see if it can ultimately break through the level and keep going. Crude oil is now at least finished its closed its sort of downtrend on the daily. It's trying to stay above that support at that 85 level. As I said in previous weekly analysis videos, that I was expecting it to come back and at least connect with 85, which it has done now. So now that it has done that, I'm relatively satisfied for this to resume its uptrend. We'll have to see if that's the case. Really, the key thing here is to be breaking above $100 and breaking above these previous highs on the weekly. So that's what we're looking for this week, is to see if we break back up even above last week's high, to see if we resume this and begin a fresh uptrend this week, heading up towards 100. Could provide some good tradable opportunities here. For example, could be a potential long setup here. Just looking at this entry above the high of this candle, stop loss below the low, and targeting. Again, it's going to be very choppy because it is effectively range bound at this point in time, but looking for this to now start to break above these highs and head back up towards $100, and then head up to 105 and then up towards 110. But that weekly looks pretty good. It's definitely starting to lean bullish. That it's broken that bearish kind of angular momentum there. It looks as though it wants to push further up. Hasn't quite connected with the moving moving averages here. I would have liked this to drop a little bit further, but overall, that's why I drew this trend line in here, just to see if we would stay above that and if it is more bullish than bearish. Moving on to sugar. Sugar is finding a bit of juice here as well, also finding a bit of strength. Break above these recent highs. We'll see a continuation back up towards 19 and potentially as far as 20. We'll see how that goes. 20 is definitely resistance for sugar. Coffee as well, very strong bullish recovery. It's got to get past this area, but I would say all of this indicates it is very keen to continue up from there. Can it succeed in doing that? This is the battle, but overall the indication is it wants to try. So there might be some daily retracements, but also expect that to potentially push a little bit higher. Wheat is forming a base at this point in time, so this would almost be what's referred to as an accumulation phase. There's no change in trend here. Again, there's bullish divergence. All of this really only matters once price action has confirmed that bullish divergence that we're seeing, that has to break up above these previous highs and produce a change in trend. So that's what I need to see over there. And cotton, also pushing back up, very strong recovery, but again, a very strong level of resistance. So strong, in fact, I think I'm just going to mark it and let's see how it does this week if we can get past that. So quite a few of these commodities have recovered relatively well. They've kind of had a bit of a sell-off, recovered, but the question is there a demand beyond their current resistance levels? We'll have to see if there's buyers above that. Moving on to the global indices. Okay, so this is really an interesting inflection point. As I said, the more bearish people are, the more bullish I become. So, there's that old expression, something along the lines of to the effect of, when your shoe shine boy is giving you stock tips, it's time to get out to the markets. And this is sort of the opposite of that. There's an argument to be made for the market to head lower. Absolutely. As I said, I've mentioned before, Michael Burry from Big Short, Ray Dalio from Bridgewater, they've got really valid arguments. But here's the beauty. As I said, I don't know if I've actually said this in my analysis, but one of the beautiful things that Biden is doing, and doing really well at the moment, is rebuilding the middle class out of America. And what that is likely to do is, if you have a strong middle class, then your economy is in a much better state to recover. So one of the things that I believe could happen, I think a recession is inevitable to some degree. The question is just how bad it is. I think we could see the markets head low, but this might ultimately still turn out to be the bottom of the market if we do see it head down towards these lows. That could still be it. And a double bottom in this area would be even better as a buying opportunity, and we'll see very quickly if that's going to be the case. However, I still feel that this area where the market is even right now, this coming week, could still ultimately turn out to be a turning around area. So we've got some ideas that I think this week is going to be interesting, because we could find Monday that the markets come back. They've thought about Jackson Hole, they've thought about everything, and they're not too concerned about it, and investors start creeping back in. And again, the rule still applies that once we get back over this 50 period, we need a higher low anyway, so we don't have that. We need a higher low. We need to get back up above these previous highs. If we break this high and we're above that 50 period moving average, we're back into a bull market. So that's really straightforward and easy to see. We have set up here as a bearish continuation candle, but we've got a very strong level of support here. So I don't think we're going to have to see the market go very far to get a confirmation of what the market intends to do. Very strong bearish. You look at that. That's a classic bearish rejection candle, a break of the low that in September would see that we would probably start to head back down towards these lows. But again, we've got a couple more days, the remainder of this week. I want to see if we finish as an indecision or bullish candle, and I would say that if we finish bullish above this level, then or even above that 50 period moving average, then that market is strong and it has every intention of continuing up. And it's the same with the Nasdaq. So all of these, although I can see the current bearish monthly setup and I can see the weekly, we still have broken these previous highs, and therefore, believe it or not, we are still sitting in that fork in the road. The market can continue down from here. It can. At the same time, as I said, everybody expects the market very rarely does what people expect it to do. So the more people that are bearish on it, the less likely I think it is that it's going to do that. So I would just be interested to see if we finish this coming week higher and therefore finish with a bullish or indecision candle here. I would say a bonus is above the 50. But yes, I'm saying that even if we do head lower, I think we're going to find some really, really good support down here and maybe not have as hard a landing as possible. So again, it always pays to be optimistic with the markets. The Russell 2000 as well, even this is not necessarily struggling. It's just got to close above that levels of resistance, we'll get above resistance and close and find some support. We'll see if that's going to be the case. It's not impossible. Mondays can completely reverse. That's always a funny thing. It does happen. It can go the other way. Sometimes the market finishes bullish on a Friday and tanks on a Monday. But wouldn't it be interesting if it went the other way for once? So again, we could see here FTSE bumping up against previous highs. So interesting. And again, I think that the possibilities, there's some fundamental analysts that I very much trust. Pensioncraft is one of them, one of the great sources of data. And he is of the opinion that it is pretty much a given that we will have a recession in both Europe and the UK, and I trust his analysis on that. So I'll really just see if the technicals follow through on that. Look, you can have a rising stock market and you can have people losing jobs. It can kind of happen. We'll see if that's going to be the case. The DAX as well. This actually within the strong downtrend, a bearish continuation candle here, it's going to come back and test this level. And this is going to be interesting because if we test this and we produce a higher low on the MACD here, then we're likely seeing some bullish divergence, which could be a buying opportunity once we start to break above these highs. However, should it come back down to these levels and we create an equal low on the MACD, then that bearishness is implying actually a continuation to the downside. It's got another level of support just below that. So I do again think that the next, the coming months are going to be quite interesting. And historically, December's, especially on the Nasdaq, September has been the worst performer. So having a down month in September is not necessarily off the cards. But looking at the Nikkei, it's pushing up. Okay, it's a bull flag, so interesting to see what's going to happen with that. It's producing potentially a higher low here on the weekly, so the market not necessarily looking terrible. It's just the point is they're not looking absolutely terrible. We've also got pushback. We're still within a sort of a more of a bearish move to the downside here, a bit even on the ASX, but it's pushing, trying to get back up to those old highs. And so I'm just saying it's not looking dire that necessarily that much outside the US, and I think the US has got a lot going for it. So I'm absolutely glasses half full in this case. Okay, running through the the equities of interest, I beg your pardon. A lot of them I see a continuation back up to these old highs. Glencore here looking strong, beautiful monthly, beautiful monthly, but absolutely, undoubtedly, there is going to be some resistance when it gets up to 530, but looks good. Tesco as well. This is quite strong. This is a bearish engulfing candle, so I think it's fair to say that it's going to head back down to test this level of support. It's taken a rough couple of weeks. I mean, that's been a rough week here. You can see some strong drops. We'll see how that goes. So I'll assess how it is when it gets back to this level. I'm not gonna. That's my immediate expectation. Amex as well has broken the high here. Is coming back down to test this level of support. Will the level of support hold or to break through if it's going to come back down towards these levels? So that's going to be interesting. Something that will probably become clear in the first couple of days, if not the first day, the second it drops below those levels. And here, this is interesting to me as well. Apple finding resistance at this old level. Okay. One thing that I would say is that if it finds its way coming back down to these lows, then the probability, because it's had a rejection multiple times, so it's shed a lot of weight here, taken another run back up, and then gets knocked all the way back down here, I think then there's a possibility we could see a knock back further down because that's multiple rejections. However, we could just find it does a high low, it leads to breakouts ultimately there. So again, just the next couple of days where we see if any of these markets find some support producing bullish candles is going to be quite interesting. In that case as well, you can see here, looking at ARC, battling to get back up over this level, and again getting ready to break this low, continue the downtrend back down towards those lows. So again, any kind of a bullish recovery this week would see this getting back up over 50 would be a good sign, but the weakest of the bunch so far still looking weak. Remember that actually the strongest stocks will weather the rough periods relatively quickly, so you want to have a look at them, because if they're struggling, it's not good, but if they're recovering, then we just wait for the laggers to kind of follow up. And we can see with that, let's see AT&T still getting pushed down as well, right down towards these lows, but this business on the whole has not really been a fantastic superstar performer there anyway, so that doesn't really help us much in terms of giving us a sense of what the global economy is doing. Like, we could look at Berkshire Hathaway. This will give you a good sign. Really nice, strong, bullish inside candle. We did break the high. The game isn't over yet as well. It's possible we could still finish with a green or indecision candle or above I would say anything that counts as a close above the high of July, or equal to or the same, could all be relatively good signs. However, should we push below that, we're starting to see that we're more of a medium-term bearishness. But the jury's not in yet. Okay, so it's too soon to be able to, I think, for anyone to be able to tell you how it's going to turn out. It's too soon. We're still sitting in whichever way it can go. If you look here, for example, BP pushing back up at these highs, but you know that BP and Exxon are going to benefit from energy crisis, so they're going to continue to push up. Not a problem there. Coca-Cola, let's have a look at this, because Coca-Cola is battling with its level of resistance up here. There's definitely a little bit of bearish divergence over here, not looking great, but at the same time, I'm again optimistic that people aren't going to drink less Coke. They'll keep continuing to do it, and that's just a generalization. I know Coca-Cola does a huge number of other food. I mean, like Mars Bar, for example, like 30% of their stuff is dog food. Most people aren't aware of that. So yes, I really want to see how it handles this. Any kind of a relatively decent finish up here, I'll be quite happy with that. It let off some weight. It could come back down to 56, and for me, I would see that as a spectacular good potential buying opportunity from an investment perspective. But I'm not really convinced we'll see the sign of that yet. We've got FedEx as well, still stuck within this range. I was really hoping to see us break out of this range. We're still stuck within it. So we've actually been effectively in this area going back to almost a year. okay, which is just annoying to see it there. It's closing near the lows here, but again, all of this would see it at, I think, worst case scenario, see it kind of heading down towards 200. We really need to see it. Look, Friday was not a booster, but what's happening now is that the likelihood of a lower rate hike has now showed up on the horizon. And again, we're starting to get rate hikes potentially coming out of Europe. And we could see that rate hikes just become the new normal, and the markets just learn to adapt and operate under those conditions. And therefore, we would see the markets just kind of cover. They would, struggle a bit, but limp along. But still, is the optimism there for the business? Is the growth there? So we might be in a state now where companies just, if they're still continuing to function, we're going to see how that goes. So GM looking okay. I mean, it's still within this move, is still trying to recover, still trying to form a trend. There's no clear trend on the weekly, there's no clear trend on the monthly, and there's an uptrend on the daily. So really going to see what happens. This offers no clarity other than the fact that it's overextended. It could get above this level and then sort of find resistance up at that, but there's no clear trend there. JP Morgan, let's have a look. That's a bit of a fail. I must say, it's struggling to get above that 50-period moving average. Look at that, just a failure above that. Any close above that would be a great sign. It would be a very bullish sign, very positive. This is on the monthly. Not seeing that yet. So that I'll just have to wait and see. Again, we're only in a downtrend on the weekly. If we break this low, and if we produce, we break up and we close higher, then we have the potential to be in a bull market, or returning to a bull market, or returning at least to a bit of a bullish trend. And right now we're stuck between those two places. Okay, Meta as well. Look, honestly, just based off, if you've been following this for a while, I'm not really convinced that Meta adds any real value to the planet at this point. So I'm not really sure where their value comes from, but obviously as a tech company, there's quite a bit here. So just looking at struggling to pick itself up off the ground. I keep feeling like it's been kicked while it's down, and we'll have to see if it heads further down this week. But again, also, I wouldn't count on it as a valid, I know it's one of the FANG, but I wouldn't necessarily count on it as a leading indicator. Okay, so again, we've got a really strong, I think Morgan Stanley, I beg your pardon, breaking up. It's got a strong, we had a bearish engulfing candle for the entire week last week, just didn't look very happy. And actually, it's coming back into these old highs, so it might still find some support. Let's see how that goes. Otherwise, yeah, I'm expecting these to start to head lower. We've got Netflix, same thing again, cannot get back up above this 250 level, and it looks as though they're pretty much set to head lower. Nvidia, shame. Big first time it gets a bit of a bullish move. It's tried to do it. It could end up being an inverted head and shoulders. So this is what a lot of these charts are forming, but we're not there yet. And again, it doesn't count until you break that neckline. So let's see if that is going to be the case this week. Otherwise, it's just a double top, and we're coming back down to the bottom. Okay, it really is tricky to see. We're going to have to see how the week plays out. Fundamentalists will say, no, it's got to head lower, but the technicals are saying, listen, it could go either way. And again, here we've broken up above these old highs. Will it find support here and then go back up, or will it come back down? And all that really then makes it is sort of a continuation pattern there. Let's look at Spider, SPDR. So yeah, it's all right. It's trying. Again, it's in an uptrend on the weekly. So there is an uptrend of the weekly. A bullish candle this week and an attempt to finish higher could be a nice bit of sign of optimism there. Spotify is the same as Netflix, is the same as Facebook, as Meta, and is the same as, say, ARK. They're all just kind of being right down on the mat, being kicked down. We'll see how that goes. Tesla. So this is a barrier. 300 is a really strong ceiling for it, and if it could get back above that, then I'm looking forward to seeing it come back up towards these highs, towards 360. But if it closes this way and we break the low of this, we could see Tesla heading back down towards say 212. We just had that Tesla split as well, Tesla stock split, not toxic split, and so yeah, there's the possibility. But overall, I would say it's performing quite well. We'll see how it's going to do. Vanguard broke above the high, found some strong resistance over here, so it's being knocked back down. But at the same time, that weekly could find some support this week, push its way back up, and we would finish with a bullish candle. So I know that these are very strong, heavy sell-offs here. We've had them in the past, if you look here. And so they don't necessarily imply they don't necessarily apply to even what the next month is going to do. But from what I can see here, there's a lot of selling pressure, and there's no reason why possibly Monday could be even worse. We could see a heavy sell-off on Monday. What I am saying, though, is that if we finish the week strong and finish the month strong, then all of a sudden it does start to look more like we're going to find our way back up in, even if we're limping our way back up into a stagflationary kind of bull market. We'll have to see how that goes. So I would say a really strong bearish finish this week does have very medium-term sell-off implications, which means that September, which historically could also be a bearish month, could see a lot more selling off. I think these previous lows then become the next main targets. But if we manage to come back from that by, after what we've been through, and this week we finished strong, then the possibility of medium-term or shorter-term bull climb, also continuation of that bullish trend, is still on the table. And it really is just too soon to tell. This is the beginning of a turnaround within, some of these are still within a weekly uptrend, and certainly within a daily uptrend and within a monthly retracement. So they're all rejecting the levels technically, they're all doing all of that, but we're not over, we're not over yet. We've still got a couple more days in the next week. Also, keep in mind, by the way, that Monday is a bank holiday in the UK, so the US will be operating but the trade session in the early part of Monday is going to be a bit weak. 10-year T-notes, so we're looking at bonds now. You can see they're continuing to sell off, and overall, that's a bearish engulfing candle. My expectation for now is to see this continue to head lower. That'll be the same. Let's have a look at the EURUSD. Yep, pretty much the same thing. It's a beautiful retracement back into these candles and a very heavy sell-off, but that's already a big move to have, and so see if it's going to continue down. But shorter term, yes, my expectation is for this to continue to move lower. Let's finish off on the cryptos. Again, nothing has changed. Cryptos are still heavily impacted by the overall mood and sentiment that is carried over from equities, and therefore if equity is going to head lower, so are cryptos. Okay, again, and you can see here there was just not a lot of strength with Bitcoin, just wasn't able to really do this. So I would say this week we could just stay where we are, potentially head lower, unless we have a beautiful, some kind of good news ray of sunshine that turns everything around. My expectation is that this is going to continue to drift lower slowly. Ethereum a little bit stronger. It had a little bit of a deeper retracement, but it's still, and there's some good strong support here. But yeah, we're gonna have to see how that ultimately plays out. We've got a downtrend on that weekly, on that daily, and so the sentiment is more bearish. And I have to say that if you're getting, if you're getting any kind of anyone who's convincing you or trying to sell you on the fact that cryptos are about to start the next biggest bull rally of their entire lives, it's bollocks, because there's no evidence to support that. There really isn't, and you can't have it without equities recovering, so just ignore it, please. The only reason to consider getting involved in these, if you're thinking long term and you believe in the concept of a digital currency. That's it. Nothing more complicated than that. Cardano also back down at its lows here, just not able to get out of this rut. And this is, by the way, if you follow cryptos and you don't follow anything else, I really wouldn't take it personally. You can see there's plenty of other massive brands that are stuck being beaten down on the mat. Okay, it's not exclusive to cryptos. They do not have the monopoly on getting their asses kicked. Okay, so don't stress about it too much. Binance Coin, okay, starting this I wanted to put this in because I wanted to see if we could stay above this. Looking at this and looking at all the other cryptos, I think the probabilities are we're possibly going to head a little bit lower unless we get a Hail Mary, bit of a recovery from the markets. We've got Solana as well, also coming back down towards these lows. So for now, I am more bearish. I'm not as bullish on them. They're weak in general. Okay, so that doesn't mean they won't have their day in the sun again. And again, from investment opportunities, this whole area until we break. But I think that when we break back up above these levels, I think then there's going to be a really good reason to be optimistic about the kind of medium term to longer term future of cryptos. And again, they could always have, we could go through these cycles until cryptos are accepted and adopted completely globally everywhere in every single which way. We can't really expect them to settle down. They are going to be more volatile. It is like the early days of the Wild West and the gold rush. Okay, so we need to understand that. Again, a break above this would be a return to sentiment, and we would see that probably in line with that. So again, I don't want to be too bearish. I'm not going to say that the world is coming to an end. It isn't necessarily, as I said, it always pays to be optimistic in these markets, but I've also got to see signs. I've got to see price breaking highs and forming those high lows. And so when I look at equities and some of the commodities, there's no doubt that the dollar is still strong. There's no doubt that the yen is still trying to continue its route, but I'm just saying there is a possibility, there are some very tiny signs on the charts that they could be slowing down, and therefore we could be starting to come towards the end. We could be running through till October, November, and then see the change. And again, I'll be the first person to highlight that here. That being said, have a fantastic week, trade carefully and responsibly, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Thank you very much.